Hello and welcome. This is Bree Stedman, host of Own Your BS, the podcast, where your negative head talk and the bullshit stories you tell yourself become irrelevant, and solution focus creates a path of emotional confidence, clarity, and control. Hello and welcome to Own Your BS, the podcast. This is episode number 7. And today I wanted to explore I can't let it go. I can't get over it. No matter how much I try, I just keep getting caught up in stories, circumstances, or events from the past. Is this something that you recognise that you've done in the past? I bet it is. And today I want to explain to you why that keeps happening, why you as a woman really struggle to let go of circumstances of the past where maybe your male counterparts find it easier to let things go. I want to talk to you about the head talk loop. Now, we know male and female brains are very different. Female brains connect emotion to events 25% more often than men. Now, what does that actually mean in regards to your head talk? Well, when an event happens, in the split moments after an event occurs, the event runs through a series of filters in your brain. Now, the reticular activating system is a space between your conscious and your unconscious thoughts. And the reticular activating system manages and controls these filters. Filters such as the sights, the sounds, the memories that you pick up on when the event happens. Now, we also have filters that are linked to our hormone states. So depending on where you are in the month, depending on where your estrogen progesterone levels are laying, you are going to perceive different filters in this event. And in the split moment after an event happens, your conscious brain creates a story. It creates your version of what happened. Now, because the conscious brain is your focus, the reticular activating system then listens in, hones in, and feeds the filtered information from the story that you have created into the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind then seeks experiences and evidence to support what it is that you are thinking about. Once this evidence has been created, the emotion that you have connected to the event becomes attached and it becomes strengthened every single time you think about it. Now, what happens for women is we leave an event and we start thinking about it. We start trying to understand why these things happened, what we could have done differently, what we could have said differently, how we could have changed the outcome. Now, if you've got insecurities, doubts, or fears, then the story that you're looking for is likely blaming yourself as to why these things happened. And so maybe you belittle yourself, you pull yourself down a little bit. And then you go and you start talking about the event to maybe a best friend or a partner. The verbal act of resharing this event does what? Yep, you guessed it. It strengthens all those emotions that you have connected to that specific event. And because that's what you're focusing on, again, the reticular activating system hears this conscious thought, feeds the information back into your unconscious mind. Your unconscious mind goes, oops, she's talking about it again. Let's remind her of all of the reasons why she should be feeling insecure, why she should be doubting, why that person did what they did to her, why these things keep happening. This loop continues to cycle, and every single time you go into story, you go back into feeling. And the reticular activating system, which is listening to your focus, that is your head talk, is going to validate the thoughts every single time. Now, this happens with both men and women, but because we connect emotion to our stories 25% more often than men, when the emotion is connected, the memory is then burned. So you will recall the details of that event over and over again, more and more often than a man will. And because we as females are more emotionally driven, the emotion is going to fuel your need to re-talk about it, to keep thinking about it, to try and validate why you are feeling what you're feeling, to justify it, so to speak. So, how do we as women stop the head talk loop? Firstly, we have to recognize that every time we choose to go back into story, we are choosing to give our personal power to either that event or the person that has caused us to feel that way. It is a choice that we make, whether it's conscious or not. You choose to storytell. And so the first step is to stop telling the story. The moment that you hear yourself replaying an event from the past, whether it is a thought or a spoken word, I encourage you to stop in your tracks and bring your attention back to the here and now, because it's only the here and now that is going to set you free from the head talk loop. So, you've identified that you're telling a story again. What does that story make you feel? Please start recognizing that every story you tell yourself is connected to an emotion. And when you identify what that emotion is, remember again, there is a choice. You can continue to feel the way that you are feeling, or we can do something with it. And right now, I want to share with you a little strategy that you can do when you are feeling an emotion that is not serving you, when you are feeling yourself getting caught up in a story. So the very first step, once you've recognized what it is that you're feeling, is to ask yourself, am I ready to let it go? Am I ready to change my focus? Now, if the answer is no, then maybe you need to sit in the shit for a little while longer. And I say that with all of the love in the world. But until you choose to change, nothing or no one can help you to move forward. When you've decided to move forward, the first thing I want you to do is just to lift your eyes. Focus on a stationary point slightly above eye level. In a previous podcast, I mentioned that elevating your gaze physiologically changes the stance of your body and it therefore lifts you out of a negative feeling. Today, I want to take that a little bit further. So, lift your gaze, find something to focus on, and keep your eyes stationary and focused on that one point right in front of you, slightly above eye level. And as you're focusing in on that one point, I want you to become aware of things around you. What are 3 objects that you can see to the left of that stationary point? Keeping your eyes still, be mindful of those 3 things. Now identify 3 things to the right of that stationary point. How far around can you see while keeping your eyes focused dead ahead? Is there anything that you can become aware of above that point that you're focusing on? What are the sounds that you can hear? Are there smells that you can identify? Be mindful of all of the space all around you. And as you take on board all of this information, just pay attention to how your body feels. How are those thoughts? 9 times out of 10, this is going to calm both your mind and your body. And from this calm state, we can then go back to the story that you keep focusing on, because the emotion will no longer be charging it. So, what can you do about that story that you keep replaying? Are there things that you can change? Or does the change look like just letting it go and moving forward? What are things that you can do right here, right now, to take you away from that state where you were doubting yourself, where you were caught up in a negative emotion? What can you focus on that brings you joy? I then encourage you from this calm state to do something different. By now, if you've been listening to these podcast episodes, you should be getting an idea of the overall advice that I continue to give. And that is, when you recognize you are in a story, whether it is good or bad, recognize the longer you stay in that space, the stronger the emotion that you have connected to the story is going to become. And you are going to become emotionally driven to stay stuck. So identify what story it is that you're telling yourself. Bring it back down. What is it making you feel? And then actively choose to do something different. Knowing that every single time you do something different, you are taking control of the story. You are taking control of the situation that is causing you to feel less than your best. This is the philosophy of own your BS. It's about putting ownership and responsibility back into your hands so that you can control the things that take up time in your life. Ultimately, the more you understand the way that your brain works, the more you understand that your focus determines what your reticular activating system hones in on, the more you recognize that the focus is going to continue to show up if it's negative or positive, and then actively choose to diffuse the negative, to shift your focus to something that you can control, to something that makes you feel more positive, the more you do that, the more you are owning your BS. And ultimately, that is how we can operate then from a space of positive influence. Because the more often we do that, the more often the people in your world will see that you can take back personal power at any time you choose. And that's the definition of influence. It's not just talking the talk. It's walking the walk. It's making conscious choices to get out of the stories that aren't serving you, to stop replaying it, to stop trying to let it go and make the decision to just do that by consciously shifting your focus. And because we're women, we can do that easier when we consciously address the emotion that we've assigned to that event. Men can generally just logically shift their attention to something different, and they can do it with ease. We as women must come back to the emotion first. We must neutralize the intensity of that emotion that we're feeling so that we can let it go, so we can stop replaying the story and we can move forward. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 7 of Own Your BS, the podcast. It has been a pleasure spending time with you again today. And I look forward to hearing from you, to hearing how often you lift your gaze and become aware of the situation all around you, of the space that is available to you, and how that in turn helps you to neutralize the negative and take back a stance of positive power. And let me just give you a little side hint. The next time you're feeling overwhelmed or anxious, nervous or stressed, this strategy of lifting your gaze and identifying the objects in the space around you is going to bring that nervous energy down to a much more manageable level very, very quickly. So remember, you can control your emotional states. It's just a matter of knowing the tips and tricks to give you the most amount of clearance. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you next week.